Oh, if I knew the words to say, I would say them over. I'd say them over and again.
Welcome back to another episode of Master the Art of Music Creation Remix at avidblogs.com. Today I will guide you through the process of how to create a bass for the remix I'm working on. Bass and kick are very important for dance music, so I will also spend some time on how to use AX plugins and Pro Tools features in order to mix the bottom end of this track. Over the past episodes of this series, I prepared the vocals with elastic time, created a main synth element for the remix as well as beats. With the same virtual instruments Diva and Loom, I created a second synth part. For this episode, I'd now like to create some bass parts. But let's listen first to that second synth part. Nice, so the first synth element works pretty well with the vocals, but when the new harmonies kick in, I definitely miss something at the low end. I don't think that this new bass line needs to play something entirely different. Supporting the existing synths might be enough. The first instrument I use for the bass is Nexus. Besides its very rich sound, I personally like the GUI too. I'll choose a very basic bass sound, but I like this one in particular as it fits nicely in a mix. I have one of the printed synth instruments right here. Underneath is an instrument track with Nexus, and I will change the track view to notes. This turns my edit window into a MIDI editor at the same time. Now I can create MIDI notes just referencing an audio track, for example. It's a little bit like an audio to MIDI workflow. So I'm using the Smart tool, which is basically a combination of the trimmer, selector and grabber tool. It also works the same on MIDI tracks or as previously shown in the MIDI editor. On the little keyboard right here I can easily find the right key and position, which I now create just by double clicking. If I want to move the piano roll up or down in order to place the notes even closer to my reference track, I just hold down all the three modifier keys while click and hold on the keyboard and then just move it like this. Now I can create this bass line very easily by using the Option key in order to copy the notes and then move them to the right position. So as you can see, this is another way to edit MIDI within Pro Tools. By the way, you can still change the velocity of notes by holding down the Command key. Or just open the automation lane underneath the track in order to edit pitch or any other controller data accordingly. Nexus now adds some nice bottom end, which I missed, but I like to use a second instrument in addition to give the bass sound a bit more tone or just a different character. If you work on your remix, always bear in mind the frequency ranges when you choose your instruments and sounds. Nexus nicely fills the range between kick and synths. In addition to that, I'd like to give it a bit more presence in the frequency range above that. For that, let's use FM8 from Native Instruments. Starting from one of the factory patches, I will tweak it a little bit by using some of the parameters on the Easy Morph page. Now I just copy the clip from Nexus in order to layer both sounds. Again, if you copy things, no matter if it's a single note or plugin from one track to another or an entire clip like this, always hold down the Option key. As before with the synths, I printed the bass lines to audio in order to really cut the tails to grid. I adjust the levels nicely with clip gain and also use the Audio Suite Reverse plugin to add some effects. Let's listen to how the bass line comes together with the beats I've done in the last episode. Let's finally have a look at the plugins I use to mix bass and beats together. If I switch to the mix window, you can see that the red tracks are my drum tracks. The green ones are all the individual synth elements and the blue is for the bass. You can apply colors to your tracks by selecting the tracks and opening the color palette and choose your favorite color. All individual instruments are grouped and bussed into auxiliary channels in order to process them together in addition to individual processing on each track. A great feature about Pro Tools HD software are these VCA faders just here. They control instrument groups and I always use them in every session in order to quickly mute or solo these instrument groups or adjust the overall level of a group. In addition to grouping and bussing, the VCAs offer even more flexibility when dealing with a large number of tracks in your session. I also like controlling VCAs with my Artist Mix controller using a feature called Layouts. By creating a layout, I can make the VCAs appear as dedicated faders on the controller and can lock them so they keep their position no matter where I bank the rest of the faders. If you look at the two bass lines right here, I've renamed the tracks. One is Punch, which is the former Nexus instrument, and the other is Tone, which was native instrument FM8. Both now being audio tracks. On the Tone track, which at some point shares the same frequency ranges as the kick around 80 to 150 Hz, I use the Multiband Sidechain from Vengeance in order for the kick to duck this bass track. This way I can achieve more space in the mix for the kick. With a Multiband Sidechain you can duck signals on either the tempo of your host, an incoming audio signal, or from a MIDI trigger. You can also duck the signal at two different frequency bands independently. This is really flexible and beside being a great help for mixing, you can also use it as a creative tool to shape sounds. I love this plugin and you'll see that I'm using it later on many tracks. Again, I'm using the Avid channel strip on both tracks to add a bit of compression and to cut off frequencies. By using the Brainworks Stereo Maker, I'm widening the stereo width of the Nexus sound in order to make more space for the kick in between as a mono signal. The Transient Master from Native Instruments adds some nice aggressive punch to that track. On the other track, which adds more tone and character, I'm using the FET compressor from Softube, a great compressor for bass in general, and I also love the GUI. With the Air Ensemble plugin from the Pro Tools plugin collection, I've also widened the stereo width a bit more. Both tracks are finally processed on this auxiliary channel. Again, first with the Avid channel strip and then with the Soundtoys Decapitator. I know many hip-hop producers love this plugin to fatten up their bass drum. What it actually does is emulating the gain of different analog mixing desks. I use it sparingly, but after cutting out frequencies, it gives a bit more beef to the bass. Last but not least, in order to glue everything nicely together, I've used the SSL G-Bus compressor and the virtual tape machine from Slate. Let's finish today's episode with a great shortcut. There's a lot of processing on the bass and its auxiliary track. If I wish to hear the bass A-B with and without processing, I just select these three tracks and press Shift plus A. You can hear how the kick disappears sometimes without the processing. Now we can move on, and in the next episode I will show you some vocal effects and editing with Pro Tools. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and I wish you much fun and luck with your productions. Thanks for watching.
sharp as daggers. Oh, if I knew the words to say.